Okay, good morning. As I know, there's many Spanish-speaking people. I have done the slides in Spanish, although we have very special guests. I will do my presentation in English. So just a quick summary of the topics we're going to speak on the panel of is how to make world-class education available for all. I'm trying to summarize these topics in a few of them. The first challenge we have in making world-class education available for all is what I call digitization and millennials. We live in a world where already 3.7 billion people have internet access, where there's 2.6 billion smartphones, 258 billion of app downloads. This is data from 2017. So this means we have a generation of millennials, of people that are in class now, that are hyper-connected all the day with the phone. They are interacting with the phone the whole time, and they love it, and they do everything with it. They buy, they order food, they commute. And this means it's a generation that likes very much digitized content. And they consume it in a very personalized way. The way they read, their music, it's a generation that has never had to buy a CD to buy 10 songs when they only like one. What they watch in TV, they have never had to wait for 1 week or 1 month to watch their favorite movie on TV. So personalization. And this digitized content also allows for a great engagement to this generation in class. We were used to tough textbooks. Now we can see millennials have a shorter retention. Goldfish has 9 seconds of attention capacity. Millennials have just 8 seconds. So we have to engage them very quickly in class in order to have them engaged. Is this something that digitized content allows? Well, we think so. We think that this is the future, augmented reality, that going from this kind of content, which is what I was educated with, to this kind of content, virtual reality, and all the new technologies that are coming. So the first topic that I wanted to speak with the panelists is digitization. Is it allowing for new models, personalized models, on-demand, collaborative, more attractive, more engaging, or should we panic when we see all our children all the day with the iPhone, with the tablet? Is it good or is it bad? The second challenge that I wanted to speak on here, we have international guests, is geographic and demographic. This is Europe. In Europe right now, we have 26% of the population older than 60 years old. We have only 1.6% fertility rate. Spain, in fact, is one of the countries with the lowest fertility rate. And this aging of the population is also happening in other worlds. It's happening in the US, it's happening in Canada, it's happening also in Japan. For example, this is data from 2017. In Japan last year, more adult diapers were sold than baby diapers. But there's other sides of the world where the opposite is happening. I'm sure Kiran knows a lot about it. The opposite. They have countries represented here, China, India, Mexico, Indonesia, Brazil. They have 11%, only 11%, of the population older than 60 years old. They have 25% of the population younger than 15 years old, and 2.3% of fertility rate. So when we ask ourselves very simple questions like, how many teachers do we need to teach, to give primary education to every child in the world? The answer is, on year 2015, it was 2.7 million teachers. On 2020, it was 10.9 million teachers. 2030, we will need 25.8 million teachers just to give everyone primary education. So this means there's a critical teacher shortage under current methodologies. And the same happens with higher education. This is access rates of higher education in these countries, growing population. Spain and European countries are around 78, 80%, so there's a huge room for improvement. So when we ask ourselves, how is the number of higher ed students is going to grow in the world? From 2015, it was 154 million students. 2025, it will be 262 million students. So a growth of 70%. So this means, that we have to build. Can we build a university, every new university, every 2 days, to give higher ed education, to give to all this growing number of students? This is not possible. So we have to new methodologies, new technologies, new pedagogies, just to get the basic educational challenges, giving primary education to every child, giving higher education to every student. that has merits to demand it. And this means that in countries like India or China, they are innovating much more than we're doing in Europe, because they need to get those challenges. They need it. It's a necessity. It's not a choice. In the course of this presentation, 32 babies will be born in Europe, 199 in China, 282 in India. So this means, in educational translation, that just 25% of the Chinese kids with high capacity are more than the total students in Europe. In India, Kiran, it's 28%. So should we learn from them? Should we pay a lot of attention? Is this something that we should worry about? The third challenge that I wanted to speak with my panelists is robotization and self-employment. We know they have spoken a lot about these days, Gert Leonard, Joseph Aoun, and other speakers. 50% of employments are at risk of disappearing in the next 20 years. There's, we're crowded by robots. Already this year, Amazon has already 45,000 robots in their houseware. But there's already robots doing high-qualified jobs. We expect for 2025, 7 trillion of financial advisors doing financial papers for the banks. And we know also, and it was said here, that students will have between 10 and 14 different jobs before the age of 38. So what does this mean? It means we have to teach them at school things like flexibility, self-confidence, persistence. We also know that the world population working in 2025 as freelancers will be 50% already. This means that it's going to be very different for the students finishing university. I finished university and went to get a job. Supposedly somebody was getting to give it to me. Now students will have to create their own job, find the way they can contribute. This is a big shift. So that means we have to teach them creativity, for example, ideas, how to connect. We know teamwork is each time more and more important. So the question and the third topic for my panelists is, how do we teach all these very important skills at school, and how can we teach them through technology? To speak about it, we have here Percy Harrison. Percy Harrison has come from UK last night. Thanks, Percy. He is a physics professor at Eton College, and he's also the CEO of Eton Online Ventures. We'll speak a little bit about it afterwards. We also have Kiran Bersetti. She's a great lover of Spain. We've seen her here often in the past years. She's the founder of a great movement, Design for Change, which started in only one school in India, but she has grown it. She will tell us about it to more than 30 countries. And we have, of course, Pablo Lara, who is the CEO of Planeta, Educación. So I'll ask him some questions now on these topics. Let's get to it. I will begin with you, Percy. We have heard all these days this challenge. We have seen just a panel speaking on STEM, robotics, coding, learning math. OK, that's one thing, content. We have also listened the past years, putting the attention on the softer skills, creativity, Tony Nadal, perseverance, self-esteem. So in that balance, you come from Eton College, one of the best, if not best, schools in, you educate the British royal family members, so you must be good.
We try. We try.
You try. So what do you do? What's important for you? You're a physics professor, so your answer is quite relevant. Content or skills? What's more important?
I think in the very best schools, it's a false dichotomy, because what we do is both, of course. But I'd like to just read something from the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs reports. And excuse me for reading this, but I want to get it right. Overall, they say, social skills such as persuasion, emotional intelligence, and teaching others will be in higher demand across industries than narrow technical skills such as programming or equipment operation and control. In essence, technical skills will need to be supplemented with strong social and interpersonal skills. And I think that's really important. So we've built a program, EtonX, which is an outward-facing program, a program available in schools around the world, which uses online technology and online classroom, but in a very humanizing way, because humans will continue to interact with humans. Yes, some people will be coders, but others will be politicians, others simply as members of the public who decide how these things are going to go, need to be able to see the holes in an argument, not to be swayed by simple political speeches. And of course, in my country, we have Brexit, which is, people being swayed by simple political speeches. And so it's really important for everyone that they do these things and are able to do these things, are able to get their points across in a meeting, are able to articulate clearly what they want when they write a report, whatever sphere of work they go into. These are the skills that the robots are not going to take away. And these, therefore, are the skills that we concentrate on.
Okay. Kiran, content or skills? What do you think?
I'm old-fashioned that way. I think for me, as a species, humans have not done a very good job on the planet. So I think the idea of being humane is possibly choices that we take. So for me, the choice to be empathetic, the choice to be kind, the choice to be compassionate cannot be taught through a digital tool. So there is no argument. I don't think content or character. It has to be, I don't even think skills as much as character, the idea of values, the idea of living your life, that it matters more than just your nose. So I think it's important to try to recognize that if we take digital as, I keep saying, if a child can learn what you don't have to teach them, then take care of that. And I think digital does a very good job of that, the idea of the content. But like Percy said, humans interact with humans. And the ability to interact with each other on a platform of humanity is at short supply. We are having a crisis of compassion the world over. We're constantly being intolerant of each other. We are pitting each other against each other. We have creative ways to be against another human being. But the world cannot manage that for longer. So I think it's imperative, if not more, at this time
and
to look at that.
Of all, let's say, soft skills or human skills now, why did you choose? Because the basis, the core of your movement was the yes I can, where you left the school and created that yes I can.
Yes.
What did you see that the school was not doing, and that you thought it was essential for your children? The yes I can, is it related to what Tony Nadal was saying this morning, that self-esteem is probably based on perseverance and.
I mean, I keep saying in the first 2 years of a child's life on the planet, you look at any child across the world, they're going from sitting to crawling to standing to laughing to thinking in the first 2 years. And they're telling you, look at me, Mama, I can. And then what do? We send them to school. And then we say, oh, you can run and you can play. No, that's the wrong answer. You can think and you can talk. No, you have to keep quiet. And then we do that for 15 years. We tell our children for 15 years to keep quiet and listen to what we have to tell them. And then we wonder, my God, why are children not creative? So I think that's really at the heart of it. So when my son went to school and he was all of 6, I remember going to his school after 3 months of him being in that school and asking the teacher, tell me about him, and tell me what he likes to do, tell me what whose friends are. And she looked at me and said, what is his roll number? And I thought, my God, he doesn't even have a name. And that's what we do. Our children become statistics of a population. We're just numbers. And we don't have stories, and we don't have a voice. And no nation can exist long enough if those children do not graduate believing that their role is to make something better. So I think that's really what the I can brings in, that I am not helpless, change is possible, and I can drive it.
Yeah, that's very good. Okay, Pablo. Grupo Planeta is one of the most important publishing firms and media companies in Spain and in the world. And you're focused within the group in, you're the CEO of Planeta Educación. And, your business is very different from the business of, where your father created Grupo Planeta. He was selling printed books and encyclopedias, home by home. Now you have digitized content. So related to my presentation, do you think that content digitization is going to help us truly to transform education completely? And help it, increase quality? Or I mean, should we panic to see our children the whole day with a tablet, with a phone, etc.?
Well, I hope so. I think that we have a great challenge in face to us, and that we need to think, it is not an easy answer, because we need to think in many things simultaneously, not only content, but also methodologies and the support that we use. No? For me, we need to think, first of all, in pedagogics and new methodologies, that is, what students need to learn and how do they learn it. Second of all, content, and that means how do I present it? And finally, the support that I use. It could be technological or not. Nowadays, for example, for us, all the content that we are producing is not anymore in an editorial-based origin, but in a pedagogical point of view. No? We strongly believe that to increase the motivation of students, that for me is the main problem that we have in Spain, and that brings us to a very high rate of school dropout, no? Twice the average rate of the European Union, for example. No? So I think that, first of all, methodology, second of all, content, and third of all, which support do we use? In our case, digital. No? So we strongly believe that we need to activate students. All the content that we produce is following the following sequence. No? We start with a question for students, then we make them investigate, and investigate by themselves, them to work as a group with their classmates. Next step, to create something, to generate an input, and at the end, to practice, to consolidate the learnings that they are trying to have. No? In terms of support, we strongly believe that digital have many advantages in terms of motivation for students. It is sure that it increases motivation because of things like interactivity or gamification. It helps motivation. It encourages the teamwork with tools like Office 365, for example, or the Google Classroom. It helps the teacher to personalize the learning, which is a trend that is here to stay with us. Okay? It monitors the student development and brings a lot of information to families and teachers. That, for me, is a key point also. And it also adds efficiency in terms that it reduces cost to family. So for me, the equation and the key to increase motivation of students, that for me is the great challenge that we have, is to think simultaneously in the three variables. No? First of all, new methodologies. Second of all, smart content adapted to that methodologies. And at the end, how do we present it? Technological support or not? No? For me, right now, there is no point, for example, in thinking about a digital book, because we're putting together content and a support. But we are forgetting, absolutely forgetting, pedagogics. No? And that will bring us to fail in our innovation at the schools. No? Just one example that I consider very interesting. For example, with our adaptive tool in mathematics, we carry out a study among 10,000 students that are using that tool in Europe. No? In terms of motivation, 90% of that students that use that tool told us that they prefer to learn mathematics this way than in traditional way. No? And in terms of quality, the study also demonstrates that they need 30% less time to acquire any new mathematical concept. So I think that in terms of content, we need to think that way, you know, to increase motivation of students, and always absolutely starting from pedagogics and ending with which support do we use.
What about you, Percy? Do you agree? I mean, how digitized are you at Eton? I mean, do you have tablets?
We do.
Because you still teach Latin and Greek also, no?
Yes, but
do you allow
but the Latin vocabulary is now on the tablet. So, and many years ago, when I was first learning to be a teacher, I was struck by something that I heard in a seminar, which was this: if they can't learn in the way that we teach, we must teach in the way that they want to learn. So the modern generation interacts with the world in a very different way. I think as educators, we have to respond to that if we are to do the job in the most effective way possible. And I'm very encouraged by what has just been said about students working together. An awful lot of online education is in broadcast mode. It's a mode that you will see very little in Western schools these days, but a lot of online pedagogy just feeds information that students who are expected to mop it up, and if you get stuck, who is going to help you? In a real school, students work together. Students help each other. They explain things to one another. And so when we built EtonX, we built an online classroom with breakout rooms. Students are expected to work together. And what we find, a real classroom can be quite a brutal place. So students who are behind a screen, for those who are less confident, that is often a bit of a security barrier. And in that safe environment, they can begin to experiment with things and gain confidence. And I come back to this thing of skills, and Helena in her introduction talked about grit. Now, when we see Rafa Nadal and we talk about grit, of course we all know what we are talking about. But in a 14-year-old child, how do you measure grit? And if they don't score very well, how do you help them get better? These are real questions that at Eton, we've just begun a research project in association with Harvard University to try and put a better definition, to try and put ways of measuring. Sometimes people say you should examine these things. I think that's awful. I think we need to measure them. We need to help children to develop these skills. But it's not about a test. So I think there are some very positive currents, but also some slightly worrying ones that educators should fight back against.
I see. Okay, good. Thank you. It's very comforting to hear you. Kiran, I know there's many school principals and teachers here. Do you think it's possible to innovate at school? Because what's really interesting about you is that, at some point you left, you created Riverside School, which became, is it third, fourth school in England? And in India. And India has a lot of schools and people. So your school became one of the best. And but later you've managed to use your innovation to scale it to many other countries, which is sometimes very difficult because doing good things at one school, maybe it could be the professors, the principals, the team, the students, the neighborhood, whatever. But you've done it, at a worldwide scale. So what are the keys?
Well, the biggest thing I learned is keep it simple. It's not a complicated idea. So the framework that we designed, the feel, imagine, do, share, literally is, if you distill all of it, it's just simple common sense, that it starts with empathy. I think somewhere, so much of education was about what to teach and how to teach it. We forgot who and why. And it's those first two steps that create purpose and grit and compassion and character. So somewhere the schools were all about, let's be a little more creative, let's be different. And I think that's not the reason we are in education. The education is how do we make a difference? And therein lies the nuance. It's not about let's just get a fancy lab or let's make a media room or whatever. So it's the idea for the simple act to tell a teacher that you are who you've been looking for. You are a living curriculum. You don't need a resource to listen to a child. I think some of you forgot that. We've gotten so used to telling children and being entertaining and being creative, and then we got caught up in the bureaucracy of teaching, the idea that you must have this training and you must be weighed down by this content and pedagogy. But the act of listening to a child is fundamentally human. And it starts with that. And I remember the only thing I have learned when I started Riverside was listening, because thankfully, and I say this with great humility, I did not come from education when I started Riverside. I came from a design background. So I didn't have rules that I had to follow. I literally started by listening. And children started sharing their deep insights about all they needed was some adult to say, I'm listening to you, and I'm looking it in the eye. And that's a powerful connection. That is contagion. And it starts with that. So the idea of how Design for Change is now in 68 countries, I think a lot of teachers said, I got it. And suddenly we tell them, it's simple. You don't need an additional resource but yourself to be able to get a child to believe. They said, oh my God, I can do that. And that I can is why we are in this in the first place. Right? We are here to ensure that a life is left a little better, a life is a little bit more empowered. And this framework was not about content, it was context. So it fitted into every context. Whether you're in Taiwan, whether you're in a rural school in India, whether you're in the mountains of Bhutan, children are children across the world. They need to be loved, they need to be listened to, and they need to be heard. And once you do that, well, there's no stopping them. So I think just simplicity was its greatest narrative.
It seems easy listening to you, but... But specifically, tell us about how you thought you had to increase the connection of what the child was learning at school and the outside world. Because Design for Change, part of the movement is trying to connect what they do in class, where that happens in their neighborhood, in their city.
Yeah, the idea is getting children to be more observant, right? And the idea is to listen and ask children what bothers them. So what we find is children do not have to change the world, they are looking at changing their world. That's a big difference. We're not saying go change the world. It can be very overwhelming for children because as it is, the world seems to be fractured and damaged and hurt, right? And you say, no, that's another problem. Change something in your immediate environment. So you're planting seeds. You're planting the seed very young for children to say, oh, I can do this. My school bag is heavy, and I can make it lighter. Or the bathrooms are dirty, and I can make that cleaner. One of my friends sits alone on lunch every day. I can sit with her and be her friend. Those are tiny little pieces that you plant seeds. And over time, this builds a mindset. So when they enter the world, they're never helpless anymore. So I think that's what Design for Change is constantly telling the children. Forget about the world. It's your world. And now we have the opportunity to take those solutions which they designed for their world to the world. So we're going to get really shameless and ambitious about that.
What about you, Percy? I mean, one of the latest innovations of Eton College is, well, you're CEO of Eton Online Ventures. So can you tell us about this innovation? Is it about part of your mission of bringing to more people what you're doing at Eton?
I think there are two sides of it. Eton is an educational charity as an organization, and therefore we have a mission to bring our kind of education and to make it as widely available as we can. In my last job, I managed, amongst other things, the procurement of IT within the school. And with the servers and the laptops and the Wi-Fi, I had a budget of close to €1 million. And every day, somebody would ring me up and try and sell me some new thing that I didn't know existed. And when I knew it existed, often I knew I didn't want it. And even if I did want it, I didn't have the budget for it. And if I got the budget, I said, well, we will start next September, or maybe the September 2020. And of course, for those who run startups, this is very bad news. Anybody who tries to do business with schools, to bring new things into schools, even if they're good things, fights against the inertia of organizations that have quite a slow pace of change. So that is the other reason we founded Eton Online Ventures, to have something slightly separate from the big mothership of a school, to be a space in which we could experiment and try new things, work with entrepreneurs, and to bring some educational knowledge. People talk about ed tech, and I say there's an awful lot of tech. There's not always that much ed. And so we try to bring education and knowledge of education. So when we built EtonX, the people who were designing the software platform, we sat them in lessons and said, look what happens. Notice the modalities of operation, students working with students, students coming to the front of the room and explaining their ideas. You don't always find those things in technological innovation. So I think those of you who work in schools will know that you spend an awful lot of time sifting through technology that is not really adapted to what you need. So we're trying to improve that as well.
I see. So Pablo, you work with over 700 schools?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
This is a lot of schools. And you not only bring you your content, as you said, but you also try to help them change, implement new methodologies, teach them how to do the digital transformation, help the schools, help principals, because this is a very important question. I mean, like, who's helping the schools? So when you do that role with them, what do you find are the barriers? What do you think are their main needs? And you can talk about the government, criticize, because
yeah, this is a reality, no? But I absolutely agree with Kiran and Percy, and also Tony Nadal was talking about it already, no? First of all, the first thing that we need to do is to make things easier and start to think about our close environment and not to make things very difficult, no? So, working on a day-by-day basis with schools, what we found is that we all agree on the why, on the what we need to do, on the concept, on the theory, but problems come with the how, no? How to do it. So for some mysterious reason, that concept doesn't reach the classroom, no? And it is due to a problem of implementation, I think, no? So first of all, that is not the most important, but it is a must that it may happen before starting the innovation. I think that the public administration, the private organizations like ours, need to show the field as the teachers can do their work and try to innovate without any noise and any worries around them, no? So I think that we, private organizations, what we need to focus is in innovation and quality, understanding very well which are the needs of schools and always remaining very close to them. Okay? I always say that private organizations, we are not here trying to force the revolution of a school, but trying to accompany the evolution of each school. And on the other hand, public administration, what they must need, they must do, I think, in order that the teachers can work in a relaxed way, is first of all, define a global framework for innovation, but a global one, not with too many constraints, a global one. Second of all, to provide all the resources that schools need. That means money, hardware, connectivity, whatever. Third of all, give the flexibility to use that resources to people who know how to do it, that is teachers in schools. Fourth, try to involve all the community. And finally, what is very important, all the projects need to focus on the impact that it would have on the learning of the student and in the long term, and not in specific issues of the short term that many times we think about it. No? I know that this is very difficult because, for example, the average duration of a Ministry of Education in the OECD countries is not more than 2 years. No? So it's difficult to think on the long term, but we need to do it. No? So yeah, after that, if we private collaboration, private organizations and public administration can collaborate in a very good way and have a good understanding, then we will make things very, very, very easy to, well, much easier to teachers and to schools. But yeah, the problem I think that it is in the implementation is what we found working with that many schools trying to innovate. No?
You touch on a very important point, which is teacher and teacher training. And this is a question to the three of you. I mean, do you think, for all these challenges, teaching creativity, emotional skills, self-esteem, responsibility, on top of, the hard content, do you think, and digital tools, do you think we're training teachers correctly? I mean, do you think we have to change the way they're taught at universities, at teacher schools, or what do you think are the main changes? I mean, what do you see, for example, at Eton? Do you work in teacher training? Do you?
Yes, we take this extremely seriously. It's a very difficult area, and we always work hard to recruit teachers who will have the empathy with the children, will recognize, a teacher is often a subject expert, but what does it feel like the first time you teach someone who doesn't care about your subject the way that you do, or who has other difficulties in his life or her life, and just needs to be brought through that to be understood? And so teaching is, I think, still and will always remain a very individual profession. I sometimes say to people who come round Eton that it's a rather anarchic school. We employ good people, and then we leave them to find ways to interact that work for them. Of course, we monitor them and help them and so on, but we don't impose centrally a particular style of teaching. And yet when people come round the school and we sit them in some lessons and we say, what do you notice? The thing that they always come to is the interactions between the students and the teachers. The fact that it's not the teacher up there and the student down there. It's much more a level playing field, and that respect given to adolescents, I think, is a key feature of a good education. So when you come to ask about robots and the place that digital tools will play 10 or 20 years from now in education and see where this is going, I don't think there will ever be a robot that can manage a room full of adolescents, for example. That's very difficult. But the robot, teachers always complain about having too many administrative tasks to carry out and too much marking. So what about the robot that can give feedback on a history essay as well as a human can? Maybe that will come. What about the robot that can spot when children are disengaged or bored or worried? I think there are all sorts of ways in which technology is going to make this world change, but at the heart of it, it is about human interactions, and it is about humans learning to be humans. What is school for? School is not really a place where people have their heads filled with information. School is a place where children go to learn to get along with other people, to get them away from their parents who love them unconditionally, and to put them into a world where how they react with other people will determine how they get on. And I think those things are the things that are most important about a school. And so I'm very curious, I hope I survive long enough to see what schools will become in 20, 30 years from now, because I think it will be very interesting.
Sure. Kiran, what do you think? When you implement your design for change worldwide, do you teach anything special to teachers? Do you think they're prepared to do all this?
I think a lot of it, I'm a great fan of teachers. I think they are anyway taking and choosing to do a tough, role. I think it's the most rewarding and the most messy profession in the world. And I am a huge admirer of people who come and love other people's children. It's profound. As a parent, sometimes you don't like your own children. You love them, but you don't like them all the time. But here are teachers and adults who come and say, I love you. And I think that's just a great starting point. I think school cultures are where you create an ecosystem that matters. And I keep looking at finally leadership, because I keep saying teachers will not do what you say. They will do what you do. And in that moral authority comes the ability to mimic good practice. We are, as a human race, great imitators. Even children, while they might not listen to you, they will always imitate you. Right? And I think that's at the heart of great teaching as well. I remember in school, for the longest time, I didn't know what great teaching looked like. And then when I went to my design college, and the first day when one of my faculty looked at me with, he says, your idea matters. I said, what? It matters? He's not patronizing me. And that feeling, it's just magic. So I think for teachers to see that happen in environments, to see leadership. I come from the land of Mahatma Gandhi, so he's always there as that moral authority that I keep looking at. So I think whilst teaching, it's a tough job, I think leadership brings a great, great presence and role for the work we do.
Okay, thank you, Kiran. Okay, thank you. So I don't want to take 1 minute away from Sir Ken Robinson's slot. I know many, many people here are waiting for him, but I want you to thank our panelists with a great applause. Thank you very much, Pablo, Percy, and Kiran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.